Hello everyone, HAVTZA here, and thank you so much for joining me on this course. And if you're here after completing my first one, welcome back. First, a little bit about myself. I'm HAVTZA, and I've been working as an independent animator, director, and a small-scale producer for the last 4 years. I've been working in many different parts of the animation industry, and you're probably most familiar with my personal work on social media. But in my professional career, I've worked in both the West and the East, on commercial, TV shows, music videos, pilots and movie pitches, and personal commissions. In short, I specialize in independent production, so I can take part in any project I get and in any role in the production process. Be it pitching, storyboarding, character and background design, layout, keyframes, cleanup, coloring, and compositing. My first course was my beginner guide to independent production, where I gave explanation on the basics of my animation and design methods, as well as my workflow for personal animations. In this course, I'm going to focus on my commercial process, design work, complex animation and action, and how to keep your versatility and adapt to new roles and software. So you're not limited to a single software, method, or industry. As you may know, animation requires quite a lot of work. So first, let's talk a bit about motivation. There are many reasons to want to animate, be it for personal use or as a career. You might want to bring your own ideas to life, or you might want to give and take part in the production of a story you love. You might want to push your techniques or artistic visions, or see it as an opportunity to make a living making art. Or you might simply like the process of animation itself. Whatever your initial reasons were, if you stick with this path long enough, there's a high likelihood that they'll change and develop as your skill and life situation changes. And that's not a bad thing. But with something like art, and animation in particular, the work is very intensive and time-consuming, and you'll probably experience difficulties and obstacles throughout your career. Be it internal doubts, or external difficulties with your projects and clients. So how do you keep your motivation and productivity consistent? How can you continue to push yourself to make new production and develop your technique? Many artists tend to struggle with burnouts, art blocks, or creative ruts, where they cannot come up with ideas or abandon the projects midway. This is an issue that I myself used to struggle with in the past, and it can gravely affect both your mental health and your actual career. Especially if you're aiming to make independent production, where you're expected to pitch multiple ideas for your clients at a very short notice, and complete them to the approval of your clients in a set working period. A lot of people rely on inspiration to give them both their ideas and motivation, but become paralyzed the moment it runs out without knowing how to rekindle it. But you see, the main two reasons for art blocks are usually perfectionism and the lack of proper planning of your project. To combat that, there's one mindset that I've always found the most helpful. Focusing on the process and your progress and not your final product. When you focus too much on your idea, on your message, and on your presentation, when you assign it a lot of importance and fuss over its meaning, you can get lost or intimidated by the task you come up with. When entering this mindset, you will never be satisfied with what you're making. And animation takes a long time to produce. In many cases, you will improve while working, and will have enough time to regret your earlier decisions. I've known many animators that leave a project dissatisfied, and even request not to be credited on their work, which can be a very disheartening experience, especially if you tend to fall into this mindset often. By shifting your mindset from a focus on the product to a focus on the process and your progress, you can achieve two things. The first is that by treating every project as an experience and an opportunity to learn, you remove a lot of the pressures off of yourself. And the second is that it will give you a number of more concrete and manageable goals to aim for and keep you motivated throughout the production. Animation production has many steps, and there are many things that you can focus on or mess up while working on a long production, such as your designs, your timing, your form consistency, your line quality, and many others. For every project, it's better to choose a number of things you want to focus on in particular. This way, even if you don't bring the other steps to perfection, that's okay. You can just focus on them for your next idea. And by constantly improving your weakest parts from the previous projects, your overall level will go up much more quickly. There's always going to be another project, and you're always going to see some concrete results. Even for this course, it's best if you try and focus on a specific thing you want to improve, and build on it throughout all of the exercises. Then go over it again and again while focusing on different parts of the production. This way, you'll build your knowledge and your tools one by one to a more complete set. With this in mind, let's talk about the second part of the burnout equation, a lack of proper planning and time management. Animation is a very long process. Each frame is made by many steps, and for each second of it, you will need between 8 to 30 drawings. Its production time can be measured in days, weeks, months, and even years depending on the size of the project, its complexity, and your skill. If you misjudge the amount of time and skill a project will take, you are at risk of damaging both your production and yourself. Each person has their own level of skills in different parts of the production, and their own optimal pace, which can fluctuate depending on different circumstances. It's unrealistic to expect either your team or yourself to make something outside of their level. You're not a machine, and you cannot go over your physical and technical levels all of a sudden. It's not uncommon for inexperienced animators to take projects that are too big in scope or outside of their skill level, and then get frustrated or bored with them and throw them away in the middle of the production. It's also not uncommon for inexperienced animators to take too much work in too short of a period, and then not finish it on time, make it in poor quality, or actually overexert themselves and damage their health. You might have a lot of ideas or really big and impressive projects you want to make. You might even want to try them in this course. And that's okay if you are ready to take them on. But there's no need to rush. If you work well and slowly increase your stamina, skills, and work ethics, you'll be able to take on bigger and more interesting projects. As an independent animator, it's important to know both your skills, yourself, and your workflow, and work with them. That being said, you can control the amount of work you take for yourself, your scheduling, and if you're high enough in the production, you can control the complexity of the projects. So it's your responsibility to understand both your project and your production, and make sure that you're aiming for realistic results. When taking this course, take your limits into account, and design your exercises in a way that lets you complete them in a manageable amount of time. When it comes to actually producing an animation, be it as an independent production or as part of a team, it's always going to be a balance between the quality you want to achieve and the actual time and resources you have. As much as you want every animation to be as high quality as possible, in actuality, the best way to ensure that you can actually complete your project is to aim to make the lowest amount of frames and the simplest drawing possible to achieve the effect that you want. Now, that isn't to say that you need to draw the smallest amount of frame in general, or have low quality drawings, since that will just lead to bad animation. But you need to be able to plan your pacing and movements well, and stick to this plan. An animation project can be divided into roughly 3 main parts, each of them containing their own steps. Pre-production, where you pitch your concepts and scripts, create your character and background designs, and plan your storyboarding and animatics. Production, which includes the rough animation, tie-down, cleanup, coloring, and compositing markers. And post-production, which includes the actual compositing and color grading, retakes, editing, and sound design. As you can see, there are quite a lot of steps even without considering the smaller milestones that comprise each one of them. So in most production, you'll find large teams with different people specializing in their own specific roles. This means that if you are in charge of a production, you should understand these steps, how they are done and how long they should take, how to best utilize your times and resources, and if possible, tailor your production accordingly. The different roles in a production don't usually interact with each other, and due to the linear way animation is done, you might have some difficulties if an idea or a method that was thought of at an earlier stage of the production doesn't work well at a later stage. This is also important to consider when making completely independent productions as well. If you are doing a project completely on your own, you should know the level of your skills in each part of the production, the usual time it takes you to complete each step with consideration to the complexity of the character and background design, and the difficulty of the movement in the animation. This is something that can usually only be learned by experience, and it will constantly change as you'll grow as an artist. The nice thing about independent production, though, is that you have almost complete control over the topics, difficulty, and direction of the project. So you can make sure that it stays within your capabilities and the client's budgets and schedule. A good way to test and expand your limits is to make your own projects. I actually use my personal animations as a way to constantly test my capabilities and expand my skills, so I can give accurate estimations and high-level animations to my clients. If you are inexperienced with independent production, but you still want to take paid projects, it's much better to hugely overestimate the time it will take you to complete a project, so you have enough time to complete everything while still making changes and taking feedback, instead of being overconfident and then messing up on delivery. Another thing to consider when taking a project and deciding your limits is knowing how to use your software well. For this, you might want to stick to only one software, but in actuality, depending on your project and the industry you're working with, you might be expected to use different softwares to match with the rest of the production. Of course, most of the time you will be able to make do with different exporting formats, but in some cases it might not be possible. We'll be expanding on this in a later lesson, but most animation softwares are pretty similar, and almost any feature can be replicated with enough effort. Knowing how to make these effects with the materials available to you, and how long it takes you to recreate them, is also a key factor when it comes to managing your time and your expectations. Knowing what is possible with your software and methods will be the final deciding factor on where your limits are at, and how you can expand them. The animation industry is really big and very global. There are endless opportunities to find work if you don't limit yourself to a certain role, method, or software. The anime industry in the East, cartoons in the West, commercial, music videos, games, logos, commissions, and more. Each and every one has their own production, their own requirements, and their own teams. You'll encounter different methods, different skills, different softwares, and different mindsets and work ethics. So it's your job and your interest to be as versatile as possible and try as many different roles as you can. In this course, I'll try my best to teach you as many of these skills as possible, so you can find and create the projects that you want to take part in. Join me next lesson as I'll be introducing the first software I'll be using. See you next time!